Daktari Dorothy Gwajima, ambaye mara kwa mara tumemwona akionyesha kwa vitendo, akihamasisha wananchi kufanya mazoezi na kufuata mtindo bora wa maisha, na timu yake yote ya Wizara ya Afya, hasa kurugenzi ya tiba kupitia programu ya kitaifa ya kudhibiti magonjwa yasiyo ya kuambukiza. Natoa pongezi kwa makamu mkuu wa Chuo Kikuu cha Afya na Sayansi Shirikishi Muhimbili MUHAS, Profesa Anjas Pembe, kwa kuwa MUHAS ndio walioratibu maandalizi. Natoa pia pongezi kubwa sana kwa mwenyekiti wa kamati ya maandalizi ya kongamano, Profesa Apolinari Kamuhabwa, akishirikiana na taasisi, vyuo na vyama mbalimbali, nikitaja vichache zikiwemo MUHAS yenyewe, NIMRI, Chuo Kikuu cha Nelson Mandela, TANCDA, JKCI, KCMC, MOI, Taasisi ya Saratani ya Ocean Road, Ifakara Health Institute, Taasisi ya Chakula na Lishe, Chuo Kikuu cha Bugando, Hospitali ya Taifa Muhimbili na wadau wengine wengi ambao itachukua muda kuwataja wote. Mgeni rasmi, shukrani za pekee ziende kwa muungano wa vyama vya magonjwa yasiyo ya kuambukiza Tanzania, Tanzania Non-Communicable Diseases Alliance, TANCDA, chini ya wenyekiti wa Profesa Andrew Swai na katibu Profesa Kaushik Ramaya, kwa jinsi walivyojitolea na kushiriki kikamilifu kwenye maandalizi ya kongamano hili kwa mawazo, vitendo na kifedha. Tunawashukuru sana Chuo Kikuu cha Afrika cha Sayansi na Teknolojia cha Nelson Mandela kilichopo hapa Arusha. Wamekuwa msaada mkubwa sana katika maandalizi haya. Wengi wetu tunatoka mikoa ya mbali, hivyo Nelson Mandela wametusaidia sana kusukuma maandalizi hapa Arusha. Mgeni rasmi, shughuli ni watu, hivyo nawashukuru washiriki wote waliofika hapa kuhudhuria kama wawasilishaji mada au kwenye maonyesho, na wengine waliokuja kushiriki ili kujifunza. Aidha, pia nawashukuru wanafunzi wote waliofika pamoja na wafadhili wote waliowezesha wanafunzi hao kufika katika kongamano hili. Nimalize kwa kuwatakia wote ushiriki mwema katika kongamano hili la 3 na kukushukuru tena mgeni rasmi kwa kutupa heshima kubwa ya kuja kutufungulia kongamano letu. Asanteni.
Asante sana Dr. Ndeki Orio. Kinachofuata sasa ni keynote address kutoka kwa Profesa Twalib Ngoma. Lakini wakati Profesa Ngoma anajiandaa, natoa dakika zisizozidi 3. Nimeambiwa kwamba kuna msanii ameandaliwa kutuburudisha kidogo. Hiyo Malo yuko wapi? Wangapi wanamjua Malo? Hebu nyosheni mkono. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Nashukuru sana kwa nafasi ya kuwa hapa. Nimefurahi, wengine wananifahamu, wengine labda wamesahau sababu ya labda ni siku nyingi. lakini nachoweza kusema haraka haraka, nimefurahi sana kuwa hapa jamani. Mimi sio muongeaji, napenda sana kuimba. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Hapa nimefurahi sana kuwa na nafasi ya leo, na ningependa pia nitumie nafasi hii pia kuhusika na hoja ya leo, tabia bwete. Na mimi naona tumeshakaa sana kuanzia asubuhi. Sasa ni muda kidogo tuchangamke. Kwa sababu hiyo haina hoja, haina mjadala, maana yake ndo mada yetu ya leo. Mimi najua mmekaa sana sasa, na mimi natumia hiyo nafasi kwa sababu nakumbuka shuleni anaweza kaingia mwalimu akaanza tu simama ka ruka ruka. Hiyo hatuwezi kushindwa, mimi najua. Kidogo tujaribu, au sio? Kabla ya chochote kile, au sio? Mimi nitaongoza. Ya tuimbe pamoja. Najua wanafunzi upande huu mnanielewa sana. Haya jamani. Simama ka simama ka ruka ruka ruka, simama ka tena, simama ka ruka ruka ruka, simama haraka haraka, simama ruka, twende tena, simama twende.
Attendance imeshaweka.
Wengine mbona mruki? Simama twende, ruka ruka. Asante sana. Hiyo ni kwa ajili ya leo, tabia bwete. Okay, na mimi najua sasa tuendelee. Na mimi kuimba, tutaimba kuhusu hiyo. Mheshimiwa mgeni rasmi leo nimefurahi, anasema haya mambo yasiishie kwenye kuchapisha tu. Wengine wanafunzi kusoma. Sasa nafurahi na wataalamu wameifikisha kwa wasanii. Sasa na mimi nimepata nafasi, kwa kweli nashukuru sana. Na mimi pia siishie hapa. Na mimi nasema naipeleka mbele zaidi, si ndio? Kwa hiyo jua lile literemke mama. Unajua mnaijua. Jua lile literemke mama. Nasema jua lile literemke mama. Aya mama. Aya mama. Twende wote. Jua lile literemke mama. Jua lile literemke mama. Nasema aya mama. Aya mama. Okay. Tunaenda namna hiyo, sio? Rais.
Someone has to go to the control room and tell saizi anatake control kule, sio mimi. Just copy it to the LCD na kuja
tena nataka iwe kawaida tena, sababu hili jambo faida sana. Mtu kabila kucheza sinjoi, mtu kabila kucheza sinjoi bwana, mtu kabila kucheza sinjoi ye, mtu kabila kucheza twende ba. Oya tabia bwete soba, tabia bwete jamani, tabia bwete sio poa au vipi? Umeshajua maana yake ni kukaa bila kushughulisha. Bwana watu sasa Mama Samia ameshatuambia usipiga kila mwezi, tuwe tunaitumia kwa mazoezi. Samia ameshatuambia usipiga kila mwezi, tuwe tunaitumia kwa mazoezi. Au vipi? Jamani, tunatoa sababu leo ya vijana. Hiyo price sana. Sawa. Sasa mdogo kacheza, si ndio? Mbona sijui hicho tu. Pole. Okay, watu.
Shakimbia sana. Umenisaidia wapi? What I need is view. Nataka
which is one of the leading NCDs. During this time, in April 2011, 10 years ago, I was invited by the WHO Afro region to participate in the Ministers of Health Regional Consultative Meeting on Prevention and Control of NCDs in Brazzaville, Congo. The agenda of that meeting was to prepare for the Moscow Ministerial Meeting on Health Lifestyles and NCDs. And this Moscow meeting was to prepare for the United Nations Annual Summit on NCDs. This meeting was held in September 2011, New York. I participated in that meeting through an NGO. The Brazzaville meeting was my second opportunity to be involved in WHO deliberations in this important health issue. I remember correctly that 10 years before I was invited in Brazzaville, I had been appointed to be a member of the World Health Organization Technical Working Group on Cancer, and to be a member of the Cancer Advisory Working Group, the WHO General, Director General, and the International Atomic Energy Director General. In addition to this, I was also a board member of the International Union for Cancer Control. So in my international capacity, and also national capacity, as the executive director of the Ocean Road Cancer Institute, which I founded, I learned and felt the gravity of the millions of souls worldwide. A lot of people worldwide who were dying from living diseases for a time. The living diseases I'm talking about all of us now call non-communicable diseases. These are cancer, diabetes, heart disease, chronic respiratory, mental illness. And in meetings like this, when people were talking about the rising problem of NCDs, I thought especially of those in Tanzania, who to me, I thought, bear the brunt of the NCD burden with very little access to resources. This is something I was seeing every day in the Ocean Road Cancer. A good policy that cancer services are exempted from cost sharing. But in reality, the resources to keep the services free were not that available. So I live with this and I know this. I know non-communicable diseases that we need to do more. The problem is increasing. So when a few weeks ago I was invited to give this address and was told that the theme of this was multi-sectoral engagement and collaboration in addressing NCD. As you can see from the background, I was pleasantly pleased, surprised, and then I decided that I will do it. But I must confess, I really struggled to develop the Keynote speech. It was not easy. NCDs are not easy. They are complex. There are diseases where you know the cause and you can deal with the cause. But NCDs have multiple causes, multiple risk factors, and they are complex even to manage and more expensive to manage. In preparing this keynote speech, there were times when I was lost for words. I didn't know what to say. And I thought, sasa kuchokoza mada, unaweza ukachokoza hata wale ambao ndio wanatakiwa kusaidia. Sasa ukiwachokoza, hata msaada unaweza usipate. Lakini kuna vitu vya ukweli ambazo ukivisema watu wakuelewa, wakapanga vizuri mipango ile ambao wamepanga na resources zikapatikana, tutakuwa tunapigana. There has been very slow progress since the United Nations high-level meeting, not only in Tanzania, but globally. Look at the Millennium Development Goals, which were around that time. Look at the achievements. Now we are in SDGs. A lot of effort has been made, but still, I must say, more is to be done. Hata hivyo, for Tanzania, one good thing has happened. I don't think we need to talk only about things that are not happening, and also talk about things that are happening. Two years ago, there was the launch of the National NCD program. And this was officially inaugurated by the Prime Minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Kassim Majaliwa, on the 14th of November 2019. That is a milestone for us in NCDs. But according to a recent study entitled NCD Countdown 2030, Countdown to 2030, when the SDGs are going to be evaluated. And this was published by the Lancet with collaboration from the World Health Organization, NCD Alliance, Imperial College London. It was noted that more than half of all the countries in the world are not on track to meet the SDGs. Our goal is 3, and it's going for NCDs. More than half of countries will not meet this goal. It was also noted that mortality from the 4 NCDs, including SDG, has stagnated or increased since 2010. Among women between countries, which is 8%, and among men, 24 countries, which is 13. So mortality is either the same as it was or is increasing for NCDs. Being a cancer specialist, I'll give you an example of cancer. In 2018, it was estimated that there were 18.1 million new cancer cases and 9.6 million deaths from cancer. That is half of that. This alarming growth in cancer incidence and mortality from 14 and 8.2 million respectively in 2014 and 2012 up to 18 in 2018. Even if you don't have a mathematics mind, statistics mind, someone says something was 14, now it's 18. You know that person. These numbers are disheartening. And given the enormity of the challenge and the injustices that we see in patients with NCD for not being able to access services, something you will all agree needs to be done. The landscape of NCDs is green. And this is in fact, despite of that, a lot of international, a lot of national, a lot of civil service organizations work has been prohibited. Why is it? Why is it and NCDA? Why is it that the WHO? Why is it that the government of Tanzania is tirelessly working on NCDs, but the numbers are increasing? What is it that we need to do? For example, the organizations that I mentioned, on realizing that NCDs were increasing, they raised an argument that NCDs should enter the club of SDGs. This was done instead, and that's great achievement. And they also put a call of fresh action in dollar terms to ensure that ministers of finance will understand that investing in NCDs is not only a health issue, but it has economic interests, and that if they invested $1.27 today, in 2030, the return will be $7. And I'm sure the coordinator there, he believes that investing $1 today will give us $7 years later. It's easier for him to also take action. The World Health Organization gave a suite of best guides. That is, if you have money, where do you put your money? With good return on investment. And they looked at all countries and they said, if you invest in this, you're going to be buying better. But that is not being done. Sometimes we say there is no local research, no local evidence to show that this benefits. So our research team, which was comprising of Mr. Ngoma, Chegere, Makene, Masalo, Maige, and myself, conducted a study using survey data collected by Economic and Social Research Foundation in 2019 and combined with data from Tanzania Health Network Information System and Tanzania National Cancer Survey to generate local evidence. Scientists want evidence. There's no evidence that if it sounds good, you don't convince them. Decision makers are entitled. So that study revealed that trends of deaths due to NCDs have increased from 1925 to 2000, 25.8 in 2010, and further increased to about 32.9 in 2016 of all deaths in Tanzania. If you look at all people dying in Tanzania, 32% died because of non-communicable diseases. So if you think of that, it's something that needs to be tackled. 1 in 3 Tanzanians loses their life and premature from non-communicable. The average economic cost of treating these individuals was $1,211 per person in 2019. Look at the per capita income of Tanzanians and look at that cost. The cost includes medical costs, direct and non-medical costs, such as travel, accommodation, and indirect costs as income losses too. As a nation, the aggregate cost of all NCD patients is estimated at $350 million in 2019, and that has been increasing. The annual cost for health services by the government in all types, which includes commodity, program, and totals, now is $1 trillion. And this was across 2015, 2020. So you can see the costs of dealing with NCDs are increasing. But these are preventable diseases. We have the risk factors that we know. Treating NCDs is more expensive than preventing them. Why is it difficult to implement prevention? We've been talking of tobacco control. Everybody inside here knows tobacco is one of the main risk factors. Tobacco is still being consumed. Why? Do we need money to deal with that? Is that something that is missing? At the end of the day, I can say, with the work that we have, with the publications that scientists, local scientists have made in Tanzania, I can say we have erased the assumption that we don't know what to do. We know what to do. We can erase the fact that money is an argument. Money will always be there when there is a case that is strong enough. No confidence is there. Or saying that NCDs are complex. They are not. If we plan to become that disorder. So here we are today. We have to agree that we need urgently to see how we can have meaningful actions to reduce the burden of NCDs in them. I ask myself, if we are meeting here today, what else should a conference like this one do? Get the political attention needed for implementation. People, decision makers that spoke ahead of me say, it's a problem we need to solve. What else should we do as scientists? One thing that was mentioned is, we as scientists should not sit on our laurels and just be comfortable with publish dissemination, lobbying, etc. Having said this, I understand that there are formidable challenges that the decision makers, leaders have. We have these are the problems, infectious diseases. Before we even look at COVID-19 coming, all these need resources. And unfortunately, for NCDs, there's no global fund. The global fund that helped when we were dealing with HIV. One day in a meeting, I asked, why is there no global fund for NCDs? If we think NCDs are a problem, nobody is talking about the global fund. Because without money, nothing gets done. Sometimes it seems to me that it's easier to fund weapons that wage war, that destroy human lives, than to fund actions that save lives. But HIV taught us something, that the PEPFAR funding, we had a global fund, and this helped you much. And if we want to watch the lessons we have learned from HIV, there are a few things that we can take in the NCD community that can help us deal with this problem. Not all of them because they are different, but there are a few things that can help us. There are opportunities. Wherever there are challenges, there are opportunities. I'm not going to focus my speech only on how and why this is not happening. I think I also have a role to recommend a few things. These things the conference can choose to take or tear apart and say they're foolish recommendations. But that's also a challenge. That's my work here. When you're in the conference and say this is rubbish. One is for NCDs, we can advocate for universal health coverage. NCDs do not get a good share like communicable diseases. But universal health care coverage as emerged as an international policy priority in health and development. It seeks to ensure that people access health services that they need, that of high quality, efficacy, and that people are not put in financial difficulty in accessing them. Some Tanzanians have catastrophic spending when they are not well. They sell their houses, they sell everything they have. But we could have a system where we avoid that and make sure that everybody gets service. And then the next thing is the Director General of World Health Organization are given a call specifically about elimination of cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is the commonest cancer for women in Tanzania. That one, to me, I think is doable, it's possible. It's just about vaccination that's now available. It's about increasing screening and also improving the treatment facilities. That is possible, can be done. And that will transform the lives of girls, women, and render cervical cancer once and for all the annals of history in Tanzania. Number 3, NCDs be a priority government again. From what I heard today, I think it is already a priority. And it should not be just a health thing, but all multi-sectoral. One thing I would like to share with you here is, as a country, we come up with very good plans. And I've been to other countries which copy our plans and are implementing our plans. When actually here we have good plans that are not being funded adequately, that are not being implemented. I think we have to reach a stage where if we have sat down and seriously come up with a plan and had that plan endorsed, I think we should see how we can fund it. There are a lot of funding mechanisms and options. Funding at national level, or from bilateral, multilateral, or other innovative finance. So these plans are implemented. The last few weeks, I was involved with my colleagues as consultants in coming up with a nutrition plan in Tanzania. And as you know, a third of NCDs are directly related. So if that plan works, then we're talking of a third of our problems being there. So let's have plans that are funded. We should also invest in prevention to stop the factories of disease. The factories of disease are the factories which manufacture risk factors. The tobacco company, that's a factor of disease. The beverage companies have been doing work on sugar sweetened beverages. If you drink a glass of Coca-Cola, it has 8 spoons of sugar. And if you read the label, it's written there that how many of you, if you came to my home, I gave you a cup of tea, I give you the first cup, the second, the third. When I reach the third, you say, asante sita kunywa chai. But for Coca-Cola, check it. Obesity rates have increased in our country. As we're fighting malnutrition, we're fighting undernutrition, overnutrition. Someone talked here about exercises, about having undesirable weights. But cutting sugar is one of the best ways to deal with that. Another thing is vaccinations. For those STDs like cancer where there are vaccinations, let's give the vaccinations. But most important, instead of giving tax breaks to industries that are causing diseases, let's tax those industries. We shouldn't give them tax breaks. We should tax them. Because the money that they give us as taxes, according to a WHO report, if you got $1 from these industries, 10-20 years, you're going to spend $10. So it's not cost effective. And we should legislate that industries do not profit at the expense of our health. We should also have surveillance data so that we can come up evidence. Those are the 10 things that we can do and learn from the lessons that we have learned from the success story of HIV. HIV was a big problem. Now we can live with HIV. As I mentioned earlier on, the launching of the SD plan sent a resounding message to all SD patients and their families that we as a country care about NCDs. And this is what and now we should honor each and every way in that plan and implement it. The writing is on the wall. If we don't do anything now, we are moving towards an healthy future. But ask ourselves, what do we want to be remembered? Do we want to be remembered that we watched the NCD epidemic growing to destroy lives? Or do we want to be remembered that we said enough is enough like today and reduce NCD? These are things that I want all of us to ask ourselves. What do we want to be remembered when it comes to NCD? What can we do in our generation for the NCDs? As Nelson Mandela aptly said, it always seems impossible until it's done. Let the third NCD conference seminar that we find ourselves. As I'm coming close to my address, if I had one thing I would say today, just one thing, otherwise, I would ask you the audience, what realistic, meaningful actions should we take to reduce burden of NCDs? And they have to be realistic. We have to know our resources. Mind for a moment, think of the task ahead of us and the resources that are available. And if we switch the conference organizers and the responses from the audience should be compiled and summarized into Arusha NCD 2021 declaration. I thank you all for this. Hii mada hii ambayo iko mbele yetu tuiangalie, tutoke na kitu ambapo tutasema hata kama kutokana na hii. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Professor Ngoma, for a very extensive, deep keynote address on different aspects of NCDs. I have a request, Professor Ngoma, if you agree. If we can get hold of your paper, because I personally believe it will shape a lot of the discussion that we're having with students. So if you could share that copy with the conference organizers. Okay, that is very good. So thank you very much for that. So ladies and gentlemen, naona sasa tuko nyuma ya muda kwa bahati mbaya. Kwa hiyo kinachofuata sasa hivi itakuwa ni kupiga picha. Naomba wale ambao wameandaliwa kwa zoezi hili fanye haraka tupige picha. Nitahadharishe tu kwamba tuna plenary session ambayo tutafanyia kwenye ukumbi huu ambayo itaanza saa 7:05. Na kwenye plenary hiyo tutakuwa na wenzetu kutoka nje ya Tanzania ambao tutaungana nao kwa njia za kitandao. Kwa hiyo it will be difficult kubadilisha hiyo time. And therefore, proposal iliyopo ni kwamba tu skip lunch, tuendelee na hiyo plenary session ambayo itaenda mpaka kwenye saa 8, 1 hour session, and then after that then we go for lunch. So naomba sasa tujipange kwa ajili ya pictures. And again, for the sake of saving time, niletewa hapa mapendekezo ya picha karibu 6, lakini tutaziunganisha chache. Kwa picha ya kwanza itakuwa ni meza kuu ambayo itapigwa, wataipiga pamoja na wakurugenzi wa wizara na wakuu wa taasisi na vile vile viongozi wa ngazi ya mkoa. Hiyo ni picha ya kwanza. Alafu picha ya pili itakuwa ni meza kuu pamoja na wadau wa maendeleo ambao wamesupport iko na maana ya sponsors, na picha ya mwisho itakuwa ni wenye viti, rapporteurs wa sessions, kamati ya maandalizi ya kisayansi na kamati ya maandalizi ya logistics and finance. Kwa hizi ndio zitakuwa makundi matatu ambayo yatapiga picha. Naomba tujitahidi tufanye haraka haraka ili tuendane. Nadhani sasa ni maombi za kusogea pale ili watu waje wapige picha nyuma yetu. Ya kwanza ni wakurugenzi wa wizara, taasisi, viongozi ngazi ya mkoa.
Wakati una nanili mtu achukue zile mbao.
Tafadhali viongozi wa taasisi mbalimbali tunaomba msogee mbele pamoja na viongozi ngazi za mkoa.
Sasa wanatakiwa watu kufanya ukiona kuna change endelee hizo na
Nashukuru. Picha ya pili, sponsors, development partners, tunaomba sasa mje join with the high tech. Wenzetu kutoka Zanzibar naomba msogee, tutawapa picha moja ya kuendelea. This is for partners, donors, sponsors, please. Okay, thank you very much. So the last background picture is wenye viti, rapporteurs na zile kamati za maandalizi ya sayansi na maandalizi ya finance. Okay, basi unaweza kwa wengine tutapia nyingine moja. Tutatoa wote. Tutafanya mbili. Second group, Asante sana. Naomba sasa wawakilishi kutoka Zanzibar hiyo picha yetu ya mwisho.
Benki na circulate. Wale watu wachache sio wako busy. Watu sio mbaya.
Asanteni sana. So that concludes our photo session. Aliko. Nadhani hapo ilikuwa tumefikia mwisho wa hii session. Naweza sasa tutaendelea na shughuli. Ili tuendelee sasa na hii plenary session ambayo ni nzuri. Niseme tu wanaweza kuwa au sehemu ya hii plenary session ili wao wabakie. Nawashukuru sana sana kwa hii session ya asante.
Naomba mshoe viti. Jamani, wale wanafanya nini? No way. No way.
What do you know?
Sasa when I present kwa hiyo sio kwamba sisi ndio tuna control.
Hakuna mtu hapa ambapo
tukaletea presentation hapa naye, lakini pia ana present from there.
I
expect that I ndo share screen
hapa kwa muda huu. Kwa muda huu sasa hiyo sasa bana sana kama
sina
Bianca is going to stand, stay there. Atabaki huko. Sasa nachukua note.
Thank you. That is Jensen.
Thank you very much. We will have our session here. Here we have the analyst, and maybe I should introduce myself first. My name is George Luhago. I'm a lecturer in health economics at the Muhimbili University, and for the next 1 hour, I'll be a chair of this session. With me, we have about 5 analysts but we have two presenters as well. Our first presenter is Professor Ura Norium, who is a physician, but also a professor in medical ethics at the Department of Prof and Primary Healthcare University of Bergen, Norway. But also we have is also adjunct professor of Prof and Corporation Head at T. Chan School of Public Health, Harvard University. He has a wide-ranging research interests, including theory of distributive justice and how to apply health setting health system. But also is interested on applying health setting to achieve universal coverage. And also we have Oliver, who holds a PhD in economics and is an expert in the use of incentive in healthcare organization, and has successfully initiated and invested several large-scale research projects in Norway, and is a member of the Royal Commission that investigated proposed a new financing model for hospitals in Norway. So the two will open our presentation, but later our panelists here that involves from website is Dr. German Renner with Director General of KPC, followed by Dr. Julius Maisereke with the Director General of Ocean Road Hospital. We have Dr. Pastor Gadlo, who is a lecturer at Mumbiri University. And on my right side, we have Dr. David Manasau, who is the Director of Medical and Technical Services at NHIF. And on the far right is Dr. Mel Maige, who is a Senior Researcher at NIMRI. So, hopefully, Professor Ura can start the presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you, George, for this kind introduction. Can you hear me? Thank you, George. Can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we should see you best.
Thank you very much. So let me start by thanking you so much for giving us the opportunity to provide a short presentation on our work on prioritizing NCDs in the context of UHC. And I'm a professor at the University of Bergen, and I'm also the head of the technical advisory group for WHO on essential benefit packages. So I will briefly explain our thinking at the University of Bergen and propose some collaborations with you in Tanzania. So I will start with this WHO report that we build our work on. This was a report published in 2014 on making fair choices on the path to universal health coverage. So the situation in Tanzania, as in many countries, is that we cannot afford all effective services within a limited budget. So the budget has to be expanded so we can be able to provide all essential services for universal health coverage. And in this report, we made 3 recommendations. First, that countries that plan to provide UHC will also need to expand services for NCDs and also intersectoral action. And to do this in a systematic way, we recommend that services could be categorized into priority classes. So some services in the initial phase will have higher priority than other services when the budget expands. And second, that these high priority services should be expanded and provided to everyone. And one of the efficient ways to do this is to eliminate out-of-pocket payments while increasing mandatory progressive prepayment with pooling of funds, as in the health insurance mechanisms you are introducing now in Tanzania. And this is especially important for NCDs, where we know that there are often high out-of-pocket payments. And third, while doing so, ensure that the disadvantaged groups are not left behind. So the key recommendation is to set priorities as the first step on the path to UHC. And WHO recommends 3 criteria. Interventions can be assessed by cost effectiveness. That's important because we want to maximize health given the resource and health personnel constraints. Second, it's also important to look at the target groups, those who will receive prevention and care. And WHO recommend extra priority to the worst off groups. And third, a third criterion is financial risk protection. Some services can provide much financial risk protection if they are prioritized within the public health system and in the health insurance package. So in brief, what WHO recommend and what we will build on is that we need a process for setting priorities between services. Some will be assigned high priority. And one example would be, of course, as you are already implementing primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. And then some other services might be sequenced later if they have lower priority. It's also important to recognize that priority services and especially NCDs can be integrated into the delivery platforms that you have, either at the community level, health centers, first level hospitals, and some of the services will be at specialty hospitals. But we have identified, I was a member of the Lancet NCDI Commission, and we identify several equitable and cost-effective interventions for NCDs. And many of them can be provided at primary healthcare level and first level hospitals. And there are huge health gains to be achieved. And primary care will, of course, also play a key role. And Professor Korbe will now explain our plan for collaboration with you. Over to you, Oddvar.
So thank you, Ole, and thank you, George, and all for inviting us. So already at BICEPS, we provide decision support to Ethiopia, Malawi, and Zanzibar for fair and efficient priority setting on the path to universal health coverage. And luckily, we have secured additional funding from the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, NORAD, which allows us to expand our decision support activities to 3 more countries and to Africa CDC. And these 3 countries are Tanzania, Ghana, and Nepal. So next slide, Ole. So what are the objectives of this decision support? Well, the first objective is to develop and propose essentially NCD UHC packages in these 3 countries. And then in the next step to work with Africa CDC to disseminate the lessons we have learned to other countries. The second objective is to train national experts in health economics and priority setting. And the funding we have allow us to hire a number of PhD candidates and a number of master students that will be recruited from these countries, and they will receive their diploma from the University of Bergen. The third recommendation, or the third objective, is to develop recommendation for integrated delivery or priority interventions in selected countries. And this objective, we will work together with Gene Buckman and his group at Harvard. Next slide, please. So So we have already developed a disease control priority analytic tool, which we call Fair Choices, where we estimate the costs, health, and mortality impacts of NCD interventions. And currently, we have already included more than 200 interventions, many NCDs in this analytical tool. So what we aim then to do is to work with you and with other stakeholders like the Ministry of Health to develop a roadmap of actions on how to add more NCDs interventions in this analytical tool. And we hope that we can collaborate with partners to collect and analyze costs, effects, and impacts on health, equity, and financial risk protection of a number of NCDs interventions that we decide which one in together. And then we will facilitate a country-led process of defining essential NCDs interventions, then to be scaled up towards 2030. So next slide, please, Ole. So, but you know, defining interventions is not enough. They also need to be implemented in the health system. And here we follow the suggested phases of Lancet's and CDI poverty commissions, and with a specific focus on phase 2, which relates to then the translation of these priority interventions into delivery strategies. And this is the part of the project where Gene Buckman and his group will play a role, and they will use their knowledge in integration science then. So that's the third objective of this project. So next slide, please, Ole. So to sum up, so through this project, we will define essential NCD services. We will expand coverage for these essential NCD services to everyone. And since we can use our analytical tools, we think that the benefits of the work we do in one country can be expanded to more countries. So we draw upon interventions already being evaluated, and we draw upon the knowledge when it comes to integration, and we hope then to use learning of successes and mistakes in other countries to be able to implement this in a successful way. And all this we will do together with you and other stakeholders in the countries we are working in. So thank you. Over to you, Ole.
Thank you very much. And let me give the word back to the chair now, and I will stop sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ora and Open, for your very good introductory presentation. Now we'll pick that presentation with our respective panelists here for their comments. Or I'll start with Dr. David. Analytic has been developing benefit packages for clients. What the criteria have you been used to develop these packages? But also on that, given that NCD is one of the fund's cost driver, is there any additional criteria that you use specifically for NCD?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. At NHI, we understand that a benefit package is not a one-way of action. It is a dynamic process with the package changing over time as the country develops. There is no one fit for all approach. Since resources are scarce, the lot must be made. Looking at local context, and our existing health system. Also look at the social and economic impact. Sometimes you come up with a package and you cause inflation into health sectors. We also have to check, but we have to balance between a benefit and the sustainability of the funds. Those are the criteria we normally look at, plus one which was just mentioned by the previous presenter: financial risk protection, cost effectiveness of interventions, and actually we look at the actual recommendations before we come up with the package. We also look at the market price, market demand, but all these should combine with actual recommendations. We also look at the national priorities as it was stated in the strategic plan and the national and the funds strategic plan. Now, if you look at the non-communicable diseases as a funds cost driver, when we come up with a benefit package, we first look at the preventions, health promotions, and care and treatment. Now, for the case of prevention, we have medical checkup, annual medical checkup for supplementary packages and those who are at risk. For health promotion, we promote physical exercise and health education for when we are doing outreach programs in different parts of the country. We also support physical exercise through bonanza, marathons, and actually now we want to introduce, once you have a national NHIF card, when you visit a gym, you can get a price cut or price reduction of maybe 5% or between 5 to 15%. That's the thing which you want to come with, so that all this, together with other efforts, can contribute to the prevention of non-communicable diseases. We also we are looking at the introduction of new intervention, which are currently not in our package, like possibility of covering up to all these transplants, like kidney transplants and other things which pertaining non-communicable diseases.
Thank you very much. And since you talked about kidney transplant, and beside me is a famous nephrologist, Dr. Gato, NCD have increased self-delivery costs in recent years, taking chronic kidney disease as an example. How do you prioritize interventions for chronic kidney disease such as dialysis?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson, for the opportunity, and I also thank previous speakers. Chronic kidney disease is very costly worldwide, and the best intervention is to prevent it from occurring. Otherwise, it places even the most resourceful countries. If you look at the the distribution of the CKD, globally in the community, you have less patients in chronic kidney disease stage 1, 8 stages, and late stages. And in the middle, that's the mode. But we did a study here a few years ago. The patients who end up in clinics, 84% were already in end-stage renal disease, needing dialysis. So where are we getting it wrong? So To have a better view, I think we have to look from the system from above. Where are our patients coming from, and where are they ending up? So they start from the community, they end up in the dialysis rooms. Could we do anything before that? Could we do things in between to ameliorate the cost and to prioritize interventions? So in the community level, we have to prioritize on health promotion, and kudos to NHIF now, if they're thinking about incentivizing promotion related to health and disease prevention rather than taking care of those who have already suffered. But we also need to streamline our school curriculum to start NCDs trainings right from when these children are very young. They should grow knowing how to fight NCDs. But then we need to use our community-based health workers to give education on avoiding risk factors for kidney disease. So herbal intoxications. We also need to look at our policies governing access to over-the-counter medications like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are easily accessible, and these are not risk factors for kidney disease. But also, we do have thematic days. For example, every March we have World Kidney Day. How do we promote the mass screening for people to know their numbers? How many of us here know our blood pressure, our sugar levels, our serum creatinine levels? Even if it is once a year, knowing this will put you in a stage which will make the follow-up easy. Then from the community, where do they go? They go to the primary health care. At the primary health care, we need to equip with early detection of blood pressure, of hyperglycemia, and of proteinuria, because proteinuria is an early marker and is a cheap marker of progressive kidney disease. So if we know this, we also are giving education to our primary healthcare physicians, knowing that once you detect high blood pressure, does it stop there? Or do you also go ahead and think about end organ damage, including kidney disease, which will happen? So which choice of medications will prolong the life of the kidney so that you relieve the pressure upstream? But then when should I timely refer? Okay, so we should also equip our primary physicians to know that if they refer patients with kidney function less than 60 mils per minute to the next level, which is probably the district level, they'll be doing a lot of favor because those patients have a chance of ending up to a nephrologist. And at the district level, they should know that once the kidney function is less than 30, probably should refer to the nephrologist at another level. So the essence of this is we don't have to look at the chronic kidney disease as just a solid endpoint. Chronic kidney disease is a spectrum. The CKD stages are like 5. It takes like 7 years of natural history before someone ending with end-stage renal disease. In between these 7 years, there are so many opportunities for interventions, either to delay or to, in some cases, to postpone the disease. So that at the end, we don't have so many patients ending up in the end-stage renal disease requiring renal replacement therapies that are limited. So timely referrals improves both the quality of life and the longevity. And at this stage, I should also comment on the efforts done by the Ministry of Health, NCDA, and TDA, who are also loading down to equip the primary health care physicians to know this. But then at the specialized level, we also have to know that we can decelerate. By decelerating, we are saving a lot of resources, and we have also to give meticulous care. The conservative package, making sure that the patients are not anemic, patients' infections are detected early and treated, and vaccines are given to avoid other infections. So all these are preparing the patients and making sure that they go stage-wise before they go to the eventuality. Of course, we know the progression is irreversible. At some stage, they will reach the end-stage renal disease. Once they reach the end-stage renal disease, or before that, we should always prepare for kidney transplantation because that is the holy grail. Dialysis, as you mentioned, and this is the gist of your question, dialysis is supposed to be a bridge to most patients. But for the few patients who are non-transplantable for one indication or another, this is the ultimate treatment. But for most of our patients, we should be preparing them step by step to make sure that they go to kidney transplantation, which gives the long quality of life, which gives longevity as well. But just to narrow down the question now, cost containment of hemodialysis therapy. Hemodialysis therapy is expensive because there's so much technology and there's so much cost in the supply chain. So I suggest that we need stakeholders involvement all the way from production to transporters to distributors to policymakers. But we also need to promote domestic production of dialysis consumables because these are the components that bear the cost. But at the same time, we need to embrace innovative approaches that may minimize cost. At the end, we should be also aiming to minimize the amount of time the patient spends in the dialysis so that we can optimize kidney transplantation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gajo. Next is Dr. Mary Maike. How are researchers responding to the increased burden of NCD, specifically on the health setting?
Thank you.
Each one of us has a 3 to 5 minutes maximum.
Thank you, Chair. That's a tough question, but I think we can all attest that we have more people that are interested in NCD research than ever before. And in responding to your question, I would like to give an experience of what my institute, Plenary, has done in supporting priority setting with regard to NCDs in Tanzania. I myself, I happen to be the co-chair of the Tanzania NCDI Commission, which was appointed through the Ministry of Health. And this started in 2016, where we we summarized the burden of NCDs in Tanzania by doing a comprehensive literature review to know where the problems are and what are the main issues concerning NCDs in the country. And then through that work, we were able to do a priority setting exercise where we came up with about 53 essential NCD interventions that were costed and provided us with, the minimum budget that we will need to scale up NCD services in the country. And the report of that work also helps a lot to shape, I don't know whether this is public information already, but we know we are about to launch our third NCD strategic plan. So a lot of this work in costing also informed the costing of the NCD strategy. So it wasn't very comprehensive, but it was something that was able to inform the next planning for NCD. So the next project from there, what we're planning to do is to continue with the work and see how we can conduct more implementation research to see how best we can organize our care. I think from experience, we know that a lot of our NCD services are concentrated at the referral level, and we know this is very expensive and costly to the country. And some of it, I think, is the way also our financing is arranged. Somehow influences that, and in the end, maybe we will need to have a more dialogue to see how best we can decentralize the care to the lower level to make sure that whatever we do is more cost effective and it is geared towards more prevention. So more work will be done, and looking at what are the so if we lower these services to the lower levels, does it, first of all, save costs? Does it improve the outcome? So we need to look at that. So we have a project about to roll out, and we will be collaborating with the group that just presented to see how we can do the costing. So that is what we have been able to do, and in collaboration with many other institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mary. Now to Dr. Julius Maisere. Cancer is one of the leading NCDs in Tanzania, and we know that the services are expensive, hence it led to oranges of treatment for our patients. At Ocean Road, what criteria are used to prioritize services to be offered first, given the
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with you. Cancer is a very expensive disease, just to start with. And we all know that cancer is not a single disease. There are different types of cancer. So that also informs us it's very expensive because you need to know which type of cancer the patient is suffering from. Unlike other NCDs where it's just a single disease. So that's true that cancer is very, very expensive. But another thing is, in cancer, usually multidisciplinary teamwork from diagnosis even to treatment. So when a patient suffers from cancer, is suspected patient has cancer, the patient goes through a system of investigation from the clinical diagnosis by the doctor, usually the specialist, then you go to the laboratory, you go to the imaging department. So all those areas, there are a lot of infrastructure which are put in. So it's very expensive. When you go to pathology, you need a very comprehensive laboratory, the pathology itself. When you go to the imaging, CT scan, the MRI, so cancer is very expensive. From diagnosis even to treatment. So even in treatment, you need a specialized hospital, you need surgeons, you need oncologists, but also now you need radiotherapy and chemotherapy. All those are very expensive. So the investment in cancer care is very expensive, and this also translates in the treatment, which is also very expensive. So for Ocean Road, but also to the country, because of this expensive nature of this disease in terms of diagnosis and treatment, the country has come up with a policy for cancer. So from the cost sharing policy from 1997, but also the health policy of 2007, it clearly stipulates that cancer patients are exempted from cost sharing and from pay, even from out of pocket. So if a patient is diagnosed with cancer, then the patient will be receiving treatment, which we say is free, but usually covered by the government. And also it's very expensive. As I mentioned, the government is doing a lot to invest in cancer care, from diagnosis to treatment. Even at Ocean Road, we get a lot of support from the government to procure the state-of-the-art machine like the peanuts. Now go for PET-CT scan for investment for diagnosis. So it's very expensive. So now come back to your question about prioritization. As I mentioned, it's very expensive. The common patient cannot afford cancer care. As you can see in other countries where cancer care is not exempted, patient cannot afford. So the government is ensuring that all patients get the same kind of care in our country, even at Ocean Road. So patients, they are not paying for their services. But we do have patients who are in the health insurance schemes, particularly the NHIF. We thank you, NHIF, for this, because about 20 to 25% of our patients are in the NHIF. So those are the ones who are usually paying. And we appreciate the support, because the income or the revenue you get from the NHIF also goes back to help those patients who cannot afford to pay for their service. So cancer again is very expensive. We are looking forward for the universal coverage. I think this can be a turning point to ensure that cancer services are distributed throughout the country. That's why you see even the investment in cancer care in the country, scaling it up, expand to other parts of the country, in Uganda, KCMC, there, which in other parts also goes on slowly because of the investment which is required. And also we know that most patients cannot afford. So we are looking forward for investors coverage. Depending on the policy which will be put forward in this the investors coverage, maybe there will be scale up of cancer care in the country. But we know that in order to go to diagnosis and treatment, there should be screening and detection. We also thank the government and other partners. They do provide screening and education free of charge. I don't know, people cannot afford. So screening and education for cancer, particularly cervical, the breast is free of charge so that people are pulled into the system so that they can detect early. 80% of the patients are in advanced stage, which is very difficult to treat. We just palliate. So we need to get patient early so that we can get the benefit of the investment, the benefit that patient will be cured, they go back to improve the economy of the families and of the country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Julius Masere, for a very comprehensive summary of what National Road is doing. Dr. Reina, welcome. And I just want to understand how's nutrition promotion being a key part of NCD prevention strategy. What efforts is the Minister of Health through TFNC doing to promote inclusiveness of nutrition strategy within the larger NCD strategies? Is there any specific criteria you're using? Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I may take this opportunity, most of the time people define nutrition just as adequacy of food, that we cultivate enough cereals and that equates to nutrition. And so if I may take this opportunity to enlighten us that nutrition is actually a process. It starts from when, yes, you farm the food available, but it also includes how you take it, which means intake, and that is a behavioral aspect. And later on, how the body uses these nutrients that are taken in order to give health. And so, given that it's a process and it involves a lot of personal behavior, community influence, environmental factors, it is a challenge and it's not easily addressed. In low and middle income countries, including Tanzania, the key message has often been unmet needs in terms of calories. And so our key messages for the past more or less 60 years has been take more because you don't have enough. And this was a fair information to give because we were guided by data that showed more than 50% of our population, specifically children who were less than 5 years old, were stunted. We had high burden of acute malnutrition and underweight. Within the last 10 years, we've seen that this picture has drastically changed, and now we are seeing overweight and obesity is also an issue. The Global Burden of Disease 2019 study showed that among the 10 risk factors that are attributable to the old age dying, 6 of them are related to nutrition and diet. And so we have had to rethink, how do we tell people to eat? In addition, we know that 30% of the NCD burden can be alleviated just by addressing nutrition. And so when we talk about nutrition, it's a multi-sectoral engagement. And this is because nutritional problems can only be addressed by health. 20% of them can be reduced by health-specific interventions. The remaining 80% have to engage other stakeholders, including agriculture, industry, and even the finance sector. So, in that aspect, what TFNC does is it, together with the government, under coordination, the primary Prime Minister's office, we have been developing 5-year nutrition strategies that engage all stakeholders on how do we address undernutrition, overnutrition in the country. We are now entering our 3rd strategy that fortunately will be launched next week by the Prime Minister. And we are looking at 5 key areas that address all the way from health, agriculture, up to the enabling environment, because we understand that people cannot just change behavior if you do not support them by creating a conducive environment and removing an obesogenic environment that influences food choices and dietary intake. We also think that in order to address NCD, we cannot just look at NCD from another perspective, but we have to move lower down at different ages. And so we have taken up the life cycle approach where we start in utero. How should a mother eat? And we know that in utero is important because it can predict overweight and obesity with adult ages. And so we start from in utero all the way to old ages, looking at this life cycle approach, but also not to create parallelism. We want to work within existing systems in order to ensure that nutrition is clearly embraced and everybody speaks the same language. In that matter, how do we prioritize in order to address NCD? One, we think of the double duty interventions or double duty language. That is, at the same time, we want to encourage people to ensure they do not suffer from undernutrition, but at the same time, we want to be sure that they don't develop overweight or obesity. So we want to address messages that can cater for this broad spectrum or two different spectrums of nutrition deficiencies that we see in our country. Secondly, finances are always scarce, so we want low-cost, high-impact messages. And one of the simplest that we can think of is exclusive breastfeeding. We know exclusive breastfeeding is good, it provides adequate diet and nutrition for the child, but also has been shown to reduce the possibility of being overweight or obesity in adulthood. We want to look at multi-sectoral messages. How can agriculture support us? Because you're telling somebody, have a healthy diet. Where do they get this diet? Is it affordable? Is it easily accessible to the household? And so we have to work with agriculture as well as livestock and fisheries to ensure that this good diet that we want our people to eat is available. And lastly, we're working with community engagement. We've often forgotten that at high-level meetings, we probably understand more than what the community does. And so we're working very closely with Prime Minister, President's Office, regional administration and local government through what we call the Village Health and Nutrition Days, where quarterly villages assemble, look at nutritional status of children and women, but offer also advice and various interventions that are related to nutrition and diet in order to ensure that more people understand and are engaged in how they decide food choice in their families. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elena, for keeping time. And this gives us 10 minutes to engage the rest of us here. We will probably take a round of 3 questions and then 3 questions or comments. You are welcome. Please introduce yourself and say specifically if you need someone to respond to your comment. Karim. You are welcome, Marwa. Yes.
Thank you very much, Charles Marwa. I'm also very interested in cities, sessions. So these things comes as an interest to me. But I could ask a question. As we are looking at the current state, it has been reported that it's contributed to a number of deaths. So, how do we do the issues of financing, especially getting their medications? Because the most recent study I'm doing, patients, actually diabetic patients, despite the fact they have been given the education, still they are insisting or they are recommending why their medication to be provided for free as part of their treatment. So, of course, we are having different stakeholders in the panel, including the HIF and all the rest. What are we thinking on this aspect before it become much problem to them?
Thank you. Yes, please. Over there.
Thank you very much and congratulations to the speakers. My name is Rutger Kokuli Natagaruki from Tanzania, Tobago Control Forum. I've listened to our speakers, and actually this is countrywide. There has been a lot of emphasis on nutrition and physical activity, and as far as that risk factors is concerned. However, people have been shying away from mentioning, let alone tackling, the two major risk factors, and that is tobacco and alcohol. I listened to the NHIF person who mentioned nutrition and physical activity. When our policymakers, the other stakeholders, going to lift up these two major risk factors, we don't have good laws addressing these risk factors. We don't have policies, and still we're talking about conquering NCGs, and without tackling these two, I don't see success coming along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin Kagaruki. And other, please, there.
Thank you, my chairman. My name is Dr. Chukuma Okafo. I work with the Department of Pathology and Biochemistry, State University of Zanzibar. I have a few comments and possible 2 questions. With particular reference to issue of nutrition. We know that if you look at farmers, for instance, a lot of people farm. They finish farming, they might not even have the opportunity to take what they bring out from farming, maybe because of issue of poverty, they end up farming and selling for people which are eating. So, issue of stunting is a big problem in some areas of Tanzania. And when you look at those areas, you find out that these are the areas that produce the highest quantity of food. Why will somebody be producing a lot of food? And when you take an overview of maybe issue of growth, you find out that they are lacking there. So I look at it from the point of view of being more interested in selling the products than eating. So one of my questions would be, how can government address this? Because I'm looking at possibility of empowerment. If farmers can be empowered, you find out that they will be less concerned about the income. You know, so if it is possible for the government to empower farmers, I think such a thing can be reduced. Then again, there is this important issue. I term it primordial level of prevention. Because when you classify levels of prevention, primordial, primary, secondary, tertiary prevention, primordial prevention can be achieved even when the risk factors have not been developed. For instance, cases of children. We find out that most of the cases of non-communicable diseases we have today in Africa begin at the primordial level when a child is 2 years. When he stays in front of television for 6 hours, 10 hours, when the mother feeds the child with a lot of sweet things, maybe thinking that that would be the best way to encourage them, I feel that a lot of preventive measures could be achieved at that level, primordial level, before you think about primary. It is part of primary prevention because it can help to reduce incidence. Okay, then issue of food fortification. I don't know how strong it is here, you know, because fortification of food can equally help us. Then on the very important aspect of preventive measure, which is rehabilitation. What will be the advice, or what can the government do to improve rehabilitative measures? Because as far as you are concerned, there are cases you cannot prevent. Cancers, you cannot prevent at a particular level. But when it does happen, what will you do? If you have a diabetic who is amputated, already is done. What do you do at that level to improve the social, the economic, and other aspects of that person as a human being? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And this, I think, crosses the comments because time is over. There are two hands. If there are quick comments, Dr. Chiro and the hand raised there. You can start with the hand raised if you have the mic already, please, and then Dr. Chiro, the mic. Dr. Chiro, please start right there, correcting the mic over.
Thank you very much for this wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Chiro. So this is from us. Here I have one comment. I think this is a comment which we most of the time left behind. Our theme is discussion about sexual engagement. But I think we're more concentrated on nutrition, physical activities, and you are lucky people who are actually the planners, people from the Ministry of Health, people from Tarura, who are actually supposed to build the environment which are necessary for us to practice all those preventive measures that you must practice. I'll give you an example. If my house is surrounded by people who are cooking gypsy, etc., in most instances, when I get hungry, I will go and buy the chips. If my surroundings is, I cannot, there's no supporting mechanism support me to walk to the bus station, I'll definitely take the border. There's one study which was showing that the reason for people who frequently take border, even if their houses are 500 meters away from the bus station, it says that if most of women say, I will always have 3 numbers of border. The reason is, if I want to walk to home when it's already dark, I won't be able to reach there self. People will be there, take my phone and everything. So if we don't put those environments, we'll always move around and come back with the same kind of problems and never get there. So my suggestion is, if we need to involve about sexual engagement, there are people who are always need to be here, listen, and take what we are going to be discussing here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Our last commentator, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Prof. Thank you so much for the panel. Discussion, and I'm excited that the system that sets priorities. I was even more excited by the comments made by Dr. Lugardo, Dr. Mary, and Dr. Julius. So I'm really a comment and simply food for thought. In this priority setting, we have all these mechanisms, and I do agree with Dr. Lugardo that think about primary prevention. Where does mental health link with all the interventions? When you come to renal health, if I'm depressed, there's no way I'm going to eat healthy. I'm not going to exercise. I develop diabetes. I develop hypertension. What's the role of mental health there? And how does the nephrologist work with mental health specialists in primary prevention? In secondary and tertiary prevention, you have a patient who's on renal replacement therapy. They become depressed, they don't adhere to the regimen, they don't adhere to the instruction. How do you integrate mental health there? When it comes to oncology, and it comes to when it comes to other health issues like oncology, risk factors being alcohol and tobacco taking excessively, we do know the role of mental health in the initial determinants and risk factors, and we also know the role of mental health during treatment, radiotherapy, chemotherapy. How do oncologists, or how do us as non-communicable disease specialists integrate mental health interventions, care, treatment, and all other players in mental health in your work in combating non-communicable diseases and setting priority areas in this sort of priority diseases such as hypertension and renal failure.
Thank you very much. And given the time, I will give 1 minute for each of the panelists here to respond to any of this, or I believe some of this will continue to be addressed during our next 2 days in different panels, and this has stimulated the discussion very well. Thank you. Please, I'll start with Dr. Reina there, and then we continue. Stand up, please.
Thank you, Chair. The question of why are the basket regions the ones that have the most stunting? And I tried to explain this in the beginning. They are the bread basket of the country, but what are they producing? They are producing cereals. It's maize. Maize on its own is not enough to say that it can conquer stunting. And so that's why we work very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture in order to say, yes, you are producing cereal as a business, but also have at least a home garden or have access to the market that can give you a diversified diet so that you can meet the nutrient needs. I think we have tried to do a good job. We've moved from stunting rates of 50%, and now we're at least 31.7%. We still have a long way to go to reach the global level of less than 20%, but it needs multi-sectoral engagement. Agriculture on its own cannot work. Health on its own cannot work. As I've said, it's only 20% of the health intervention. It's only health interventions can only alleviate 20% of the nutritional issues. The remaining 80% need a multi-sectoral engagement. And fortification is one way of engaging private sector. We've moved out from the health spectrum. Now we are saying, well, no matter how much you eat, there are some populations that need additional support. And so for Tanzania, since 2011, we've had a food fortification regulation. Unfortunately, this has only targeted large-scale manufacturers. We still have limitation in terms of technology. We still have limitation in terms of availability of the premixes and fortificants in order to ensure that at the household and the small-scale millers can also mix their flowers with these fortificants. And so I would say that the theme of multi-sectoral engagement is pertinent, but we have to be open to that engagement and to a different way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank all the contributors to this session. Mara, you mentioned a very important point of ensuring that we financing for NCD care is given a priority. I agree, as I mentioned earlier, NCD care is very expensive, especially for the cancer they mentioned. So there should be policies of that. For cancer, yes, we have policies which says exemption for cancer patients, but we have a big toll on how we care for these patients. So government is funding, but it is not enough. So I'm sure that these strategies for financing for NCDs are not in the strategy. One of the areas on the universal coverage. So this can be a very big step in ensuring the patients are getting the good care because of the financing by universal coverage. Again, on tobacco and alcohol, tobacco and alcohol, I agree. It is not given the needed priorities. But as you know, the policies are there, the action plans are there. So what we need is enforcement. For the tobacco, there are a lot of policies which have been put forward, even for the alcohol. So the issue is enforcement. How do we enforce? We have, like, for example, you don't smoke in public places, no advertisement. They are there. So enforcement is the one which is needed, and I'm sure the government is doing a lot in ensuring the enforcement. The only issue which is challenging is advertisement on anti-tobacco campaigns. We know those campaigns, those companies, the tobacco and the alcohol, a lot of heavy funding for advertisement. To counteract that, you need anti-tobacco, anti-alcohol campaign. So who's going to fund? So this is another thing which is food for thought. How can we do that? For CAFO, on rehabilitation, I agree. In our strategy, we do provide hospital-based palliative care services. So most of the teaching hospitals have palliative care, especially for patients who have advanced stage disease. But the issue which is lacking is the hospice. I agree, maybe in the coming strategy, we need to recruit hospice centers. So patients can go and get rehabilitated on those centers.
Thank you,
Chronic kidney disease, being chronic and having a lot of socioeconomic ramifications, is associated with mental stress. Our local data show major depressive disorder and anxiety disorders are high among CKD patients. So I agree that we need to integrate mental health, and I look forward for a day when we'll be doing medical rounds or in the hemodialysis unit with psychologists. Point noted. Dr. Marichilo, it is true. It is the multi-sectoral engagement that will fight and beat NCD. I invite you to a session tomorrow on road traffic injury prevention as a satellite session. We'll discuss this further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, when I look at the financing of NCDs, if you look at the data, it shows only 4% in Tanzania are covered. Health insurance scheme, 4%. And out of pocket, almost 53%. Our data shows average utilization is about, for NCD, about 12 to 69 million per person per year. No data from NHIA. So if you look at it, it's 12 million per year. It means 1 million per month. Is it possible for just a normal Tanzania? It's almost not possible. For the year of 2020-2021, we spent almost 537 billion as a benefit payment. Out of 19% was contributed by NCDs, about 107 billion. So we need to push for mandatory health insurance, because that's the only way where many Tanzanians can be covered. Otherwise, as my friend Dr. Mwasiri said, it is NHF which is supporting the cancer patients there in actually Ocean Cancer Institute.
Thank you, Dr. David. Mary, karibu.
Asante mwenyekiti. Thank you. I'll just address a few issues that were raised. The first one was the risk factors and the need for the multi-sectoral action, and also NCDs and mental health. With regard to the multi-sectoral nature, I think for the first time we've had somebody from the Prime Minister's office who is supposed to be coordinating us, and he has pledged his support to the NCD group. I think that's a huge achievement, and we look forward to that. And I think also historically NCDs were being handled because this was a new thing. It wasn't very well integrated in the government system. So I think going forward with the new strategies that are being launched, both the nutrition and the NCD strategy, which are highly geared towards multi-sectoral coordination and calling out for all the other sectors to come together to address NCD. So I think we are more hopeful. We should be maybe assessing ourselves at the end, maybe towards in the middle of implementing these strategies, whether we are heading in the right direction. But I'm very hopeful that that's where we're going. With regard to NCDs and mental health, I can assure you, also including rehabilitation, it is very well reflected in the upcoming NCD strategy. All these, the essential interventions were identified that needed to be included in the strategy. But also I'm calling to my, the research community to generate data on this, because as policymakers, they don't just make decisions out of the blue. So the more research that we do that actually inform our local priorities, I think we know there is a lot of research funding out there, but we have to make sure that to a great extent, the work that we do actually inform our local policy in addition to contributing to the global knowledge. So I think I would like to just summarize it that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mary. And as we all see, we agree that the NCD is a very high burden, and primary prevention is key to that, and the multi-sectorial approach is the appropriate one towards this, but also generating evidence through research is key to ensure that any investment that is available is being provided to a place where we'll gain more health outcomes. So based on this, I should thank you all, the panelists, Professor Ura and Office. I should also clear that I've known Professor Ura for about 20 years, and most of my knowledge that I have comes from his work that has supervised me for several years and still does that. And for all the participants and your patience to listen to this, and I hope this discussion will continue in the next few days that we are here until tomorrow, and we are able, if there is any further, we can discuss this aside. Thank you very much. I should return this to the committee now.
Yeah.